Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. Hi, I'm Mike, a sexaholic, a very grateful sexaholic, and a very happy sexaholic. Now, there are some people that I had personally spoken to be here. That's okay if they're not here. The way this is going to be today, instead of a real panel discussion, just wanted to start with a few people that personally knew Roy, had personal experience with Roy, to share their experience, strength, and hope with a personal experience that they've had. And then after that, the way it's going to work is, if you had a personal experience with Roy, I want you to come up here and sit in one of these seats here. And I'm going to have Gary and Dave to sit up here, and then they're going to just rotate and come on up. I want to just share one experience I had last Saturday. I drove up to LA for a convention meeting, planning meeting for here, and I went to the cemetery where Roy is buried. And I found this headstone, and I looked at it, found his name. It's real small, it's not very big, very, very nice. And I'm looking at that headstone, and I figured they made a mistake. Not on the name, but on the headstone. Like there were some carvings in it. It looked like they'd made a mistake when they did his name. So I knelt down, looked down at it, and it was the S.A. logo. And I'm thinking, boy, Roy still is alive. And he did all this. And I was overwhelmed with emotion, gratitude for this program. Perfect setting, perfect thing to be on Roy's headstone. I asked his family, Howard and Iris, how that came to be. I assume Roy asked for that. Roy had nothing to do with it. It was Iris and Howard's decision. They spent several months deciding what to do. They drew things out. They did a lot of different things. And that engraving on that headstone is the first one in that cemetery that they've ever had done with an inset into the stone, into the marking. And that just solidified the fact that how much Roy meant to me and what this program means to me. And also sitting in his office for several times, a few hours, having a meeting with him. One-on-one, sometimes there were 3 or 4 of us there. What a blessing and what a gift it was to me. And I'm grateful for this fellowship. And when you come up here, just take 2 to 3 minutes to share a story. We have Mark down here this time, and when he says you have 1 minute, sit down, and now, do so. Okay? Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. And if you're not SA, you're welcome to come up here and share too.
My name's Gary, and I'm a sexaholic. And I knew Roy for over 20 years, and during that time, we fought a lot, we disagreed a lot, we wrote things together, we edited things that each other had written, we talked about books, we talked about high-minded things, we joked about things. I'd like to tell one of the jokes, but I'm not sure it'd be appropriate. But one night, once Roy invited me to go to a piano recital with him, and it was a young Russian woman who was playing at the LA County Museum of Art. So we went, sat through the recital, and afterwards we went for a walk. And it was like something out of a James Bond movie, because that part of Los Angeles is abandoned at night. So when it's dark, there's nobody on the sidewalk. And up came the Russian pianist, beautiful young Russian woman, with her attendant, who looked just like Russian women in James Bond movies. She looked like she'd spent most of her life loading boxcars. And the young lady asked me, "Oh, you were in the recital. Do you know a place to eat around here?" And I said, "Well, if you just go west on Wilshire, you'll." And so we turned away, and Roy, when he got me alone, he looked at me and he said, "Don't you ever do that again. if you ever do that again, I'll never talk to you. I'll never forgive you. I said, Roy, what's wrong? He said, Gary, she wanted to have dinner with you. You should have gone out to dinner with her. Wow. But the two things that I think of when I think of Roy are that, number one, that sex is optional. And in my keen sexaholic mind, that's the most important thing in life. How could it be optional? And the other thing is that when I came into the program, I was all bound up with this, I've had sex with men. And Roy's deal was always, I'm not sure that there are heterosexual, homosexual, and bisexual people. And he never really put it on anyone else, but he always said that, Gary, I'm pseudo-sexual. It's all messed up. And I don't know how to direct it. I don't know how to change it. I don't know what the purpose is. He says, and it led him to explain to me that the third step and the seventh step reaches all the way into my sexuality, that I need to just leave all of me on the table, and that it's in God's hands, and I need to follow Him without any fear and in honesty as He shapes my life. So, thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lawrence from Washington, recovering from lust. I came to the program in 1989. I was in the gay lifestyle, and I knew I had to stop doing what I was doing. But I came in here and instantly felt, yes, I needed this place, but I read the sobriety definition. I thought, it's not fair. And within a couple of months of coming into the program, I came to the first convention that I attended, which was in 1990 in Nashville. And I met this fellow named Roy, and he was public enemy number one. He was exhibit one of the problem for me. And I thought he was my enemy, and I treated him that way. And he was not cold to me, but I stood up and railed as the Sunday morning, wrap-up would happen. I would get up here and I would rail against the discrimination of this fellowship. I was colluding secretly with the people who wanted to change the sobriety definition. Some of you may remember that controversy, people in New York who wanted to change the definition of spouse. And that was me. And I fought it tooth and nail. And there were other people I also thought who were in collusion with Roy. I took it personally. And suddenly, and at the time, Roy was consistent with the message that he actually left with us last year, or in 2009, as something that we can hold to, and which is stand and contend for the truth. He was standing and contending for the truth back in 1990. I didn't understand it. And he just kept saying to me, keep coming back, you don't know where this might take you. And I had one of these scales fell off my eyes, Damascus Road experiences, where I understood suddenly that I didn't really know what I was talking about. I was so filled with rage and anger, it blinded me to everything. And I think it was because he stood lovingly but firmly that I had to face myself. I was exposed. And I had to look at this thing from a completely new angle and to consider that maybe I was not right and that he was onto something a lot deeper than I was willing to look at. I was taking all my cues from the culture and what I was being willingly absorbing from what the culture was telling me. And when those scales fell off my eyes, I left the gay lifestyle. in a heartbeat. Within 48 hours, I was out of all the organizations I was in. I informed all of the people who were my friends. Only one person was even willing to come to lunch with me and listen to what was going on with me. And even though he said, listen, I wish you luck. And it's been a journey since then, but what emerged out of it was a deep friendship which started with my amends to Roy and an admission that I was prideful because I was scared, because I did not want to experience any more rejection. And what I understood was that far from rejecting me, he was giving me exactly what I needed, which was love in truth. And that's the only thing that I experienced him for all of the remaining years that I ever knew him. And what emerged from it was a beautiful friendship, which I know many of you also enjoyed. And it was a lesson for a lifetime. I don't think I can count on one hand that type of lesson that will carry me until I join him in the great beyond. Thanks.
I'm Dave T. Happy to be a sexaholic. Roy was a sick puppy. You have to be a sick puppy to found a program. And there were times when I disagreed with Roy. There were times when I thought, oh, he went a little too far, when he'd say, well, now the topic for this talk tonight is, but I want to talk about. Anyway, I remember one time Roy, Jessel, and Jim E. were sitting together at at a table, and I'd been in recovery for a little while, and I went up and I said, I've got a question. I'm sober now, but if I go into a nursing home and lose my mind, and I don't want to be a dirty old man. And Roy says, don't worry about it. If you're sober when you lose your mind, God will take care of it, and you'll die sober. Those three have died sober. I need to see people dying sober. Don't hurry! But I need to see people dying sober and in recovery. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve. I'm a sexaholic. I said this so much that I'd go to an AA meeting and I'd get up and say, I'm Steve, I'm a sexaholic. Anyway, I have to be grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous also, because AA meetings is where Roy got sober and found his program. And so we must be grateful for that 12-step program that kind of set them all. And I don't remember too much about what Roy said. But there's a feeling about Roy. The first time I met him, I was about 13 or 14 years sober in AA when the guy told me, he knew my story, and there's a program for people like you. And so he told me about SA, and I got in touch. And right away, it was in December, Roy was having an open house at his home for a Christmas party. And so my wife and I attended that and had a wonderful time, and loved his wife and her wonderful creativity and artistic abilities. She's making these beautiful lampshades, Tiffany style, and paintings and all that stuff. Anyway, there was the feeling of having been there. But I'm particularly grateful to Roy. It's like my wife and I, when we were having the conferences at the Doubletree, most of the time, Roy's wife and my wife and I would go out and have lunch when the whole thing was over, and we'd sit and talk for a couple of hours. And he would always give me a feeling of keep coming back. I slipped on this program for 15 years. Some would have given up before then. But I knew that it was the only hope I had of ever getting sexually sober. And I was a hopeless, wallowing in the mud sexaholic. But Roy used to close, he would be the last speaker at a conference. He was always there. When I started this program, there were 2 meetings in the world. One was national, and one was in Alhambra on Wednesday night. And it has gone from that to this. Thousands of people sober in SA. And Roy always there. And then there came the time when people wanted to throw him out and take the reins. And he got the idea that he quit when he was ready. He didn't quit, he turned it over. And he had it set and planned. That man, we can all say, thank you, God, that we had Roy in our lives. You have Roy in your life even if you never met him, because you're in this program and hopefully sexually sober. I finally got sober 10 years ago. I've been sober for 10 years. Biggest miracle that ever happened. And it just fell away from me. And I am sober from lust. I have no lust in my life. And thanks to Roy. Thank you.
My name is Pat, sexaholic. I had been sober for about a year and decided for some reason to go to the international conference, or as they called them, the national conference, I guess, back then in Chicago. And it's ironic that Lauren shared before this, because I was waiting in an elevator, and down from the elevator out steps Roy K. And it was like, Roy K. And we just started talking, and somehow we were talking about what the controversy was going to be at that convention. And I was there that I thought, we have to keep the sobriety definition. That's so important. And we were talking about this, and all Roy was talking to me about is, Pat, you need to pray. No, I'm going to go to the meeting and da-da-da, and he said, I won't even be at the meeting. I'm going to be up in my motel room praying. And I was just dumbfounded by that, because I didn't really even take his advice. I remember being at the stage, we were talking about the sobriety definition. All of the New York people had, come and said their things, and I stood up and was about to say how much we needed, and all of a sudden it was out in the crowd, call to the order, and da-da-da-da, and we don't have any more discussion, and that was it. End of the thing. Everything I thought God was going to do, none of it happened. And I sat down embarrassed, and it hurt me. I'm glad that I'm here at a conference just kind of reaffirming that God is still God. And I learned that this summer. And I wish I had taken what Roy had said, that it's all about the spiritual program. Our sobriety, all is about God. And we just need to keep praying. And so that's what I remember the most about Roy K. And I'll miss him. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Nancy. I'm a sexaholic, and I'm grateful that I also had a chance to know Roy personally. I'd like to share a couple of experiences. One, it really watershed time in my life. I had a check meeting with Roy and 2 other members of the fellowship. I had a severe dependency relationship with my spiritual director. And he was very, very gentle with me, very gentle, but he was in my face. You have to find your God. You have to find your God. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for that time. My other experience I'd like to share is my very first experience with Roy. And I was at a convention, and I asked somebody, do you know who Roy is? Do you know who Roy is? And he pointed, he said, he's that man over there in that sweater. That sweater. We all know the sweater. And I ran up to him, and I had my white book, and I said, Roy, would you please sign my white book? And he was very gentle, and he kind of was almost apologetic. And he said, well, if you don't mind, I'd rather not. This is a program about principles and not personalities. And I think that Roy would come raging out of his grave, and he would say, please don't make this about me. It's a program about principles and not personalities. And yet he also, if he were sitting here today, I believe he would humbly say, thank you. And don't forget, it's all about lust. Thank you.
My name is Warren. I'm a sexaholic, lustaholic. And first of all, before I start, I just want to thank the gentleman before who said he had 15 years struggling before he got sobriety. That's my story. Still struggling, 15 years in the program. I do believe maybe one day I can get it. I cannot adequately express my gratitude to Roy K. For starting, facilitating, and maintaining this program, which is life-saving. And sometimes I think about it, how mind-boggling it is, how many more deaths, divorces, illnesses, STDs, and others would have occurred had not been for this gentleman and his family, who the backbone of this program. And to start a program like this, and in the beginning, I don't know how many know this, but in the beginning people used to call up and think it was a program to find sexual partners. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, mind-boggling. So it's just amazing. Also, I want to give special thanks for all the time and the accolades he gave personally to my community in New York and to my culture and subculture. He used to come, when he was in New York, he spoke for our group, and he used to spend time on the side with us. And one time, I'll never forget this, it was a Newark convention, and he looks out into the crowd. We had a sizable number of people, maybe close to 100, and he said, look how many rabbis here, look how much they wanted. Where are all the people from our community? And I tell you, I felt as high as a kite. I really, not everybody was rabbis, but he thought everybody was, was a rabbi. It was very funny. It was just very, very funny. And just a little bit more. Today, there used to be 6 meetings a week in the 5 boroughs of New York, Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, whoever knows. Now there's about 30. Plus, there's phone meetings, at least 6 to 7 a day, which, my good friend Eric calls up a lot, and it's just an incredible. During snowstorms, it really comes in handy instead of looking at the 4 walls. And the last thing I just want to say, besides thank you to Iris, is to Bob and Bill and Roy K. When I get up and speak a lot of times in front of a crowd, I'll say, without these 3 people, the world would look so different. So different. How many millions of people have come from total insanity, including myself, and starting to walk some kind of road a little bit closer to sanity. Every day I'm hoping for more and more sanity. And I really thank this conference. It put up a tremendous conference. And anybody who had anything to do with it, God bless you. And I'm really going to miss everybody. I sometimes feel I live from 6 months to 6 months, before I get to meet people again. I don't know if I'll make the next one, but certainly, God willing, I'll make the one in New York. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Dana. I'm a grateful sexaholic, lustaholic from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And God, I miss you, Roy. I'm reminded actually of something that I wrote down that Jess had once said, and I never got to meet Jess, but thankfully I got to meet Roy. And I don't know that Jess was speaking about Roy, but it's pertinent to me. And he was warning about the danger of putting someone on a pedestal. I think he was quoting someone else. But the danger of putting someone on a pedestal, he shared, was that we can deny our responsibility to do what that person did and to become what that person became. And I want to make sure that that doesn't happen with Roy. I mean, he was a prophet, a visionary, but he was just a man. He was just like us. And he wasn't in some advanced class that we can't aspire to. There is no advanced class. We're all in the same class. And we need to be just like Roy. My experience with Roy that I remember the most was soon after I met him, we were putting something together for the Philadelphia convention in 2005, and I was youthful, exuberant, almost 4 years sober, and I was giving him all these great ideas I thought about what he should do. Okay, some of you know Roy. Anyway, I got back the next day this email where he just went completely crazy. He said, this stuff is completely the opposite of what I'm trying to say, and why don't you just take over? Maybe you should do it yourself. And I was shook because I just was honored and afraid of this guy and just trying to help. Anyway, the guys in my local group, they accused me of I'm going to cause Roy to lose his sobriety, and I was like, oh my God. And obviously that didn't happen. It was one of his, some of you know he was on again, off again, can I handle movies? And he had just seen a movie and he couldn't handle it. And he made amends, and we had a great little session in Philadelphia. So I loved that man. And the last thing I want to share is that when we knew the end was near, and I wrote my last email thanking him and telling him what he meant to me. I promised him that some of us would pick up the torch and just carry it a little further up the mountain. All right? And now that was pretty presumptuous of me, but we're on the hook now. All right? So some of you know who you are. Pick up the torch. All right? That's how we can really honor Roy, not just by lauding him or maybe making him into a legend or a demigod. Let's carry that torch that he started carrying just a little further up the mountain. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Eric, sexaholic. Three things that come to me regarding the whole thing of what the fellowship and what Roy carried through God. I guess because it was God. It really wasn't Roy. God used Roy as a vehicle. But the one thing was standing away. For me, it was what I got from him was standing away from the culture and not having. It's almost like being in a fishbowl and standing outside of the fishbowl and realizing that the fishbowl is not the whole picture all the time. I really learned about what a man was and what it really means to be a man through hanging out with other men and running with a pack. And there was no therapist out there at the time that was willing to tell me that. But S.A. and Roy never told me that. It was implied through the fellowship and how I got the fellowship. Running with the pack grew me up. I never had a father. So this fellowship in a way fathered me. And so Roy was a father of the fellowship, and it was kind of like having a father in that way. The other thing that there's two other things. Roy taught me to stand without running and without fighting, is to stand with my higher power. So I learned that, and I learned that directly from watching him. I learned that from watching him and listening to him. The last thing is Roy, along with others, taught me what it was when it was the whole thing regarding lust, and that was the issue, and that's influenced me greatly. I really am powerless over lust, and that's what's really killing me. That's what kills me. So that's all. I loved what Roy gave us. I loved him as a person. Goodbye, Roy.
My name is Liliana, and I'm recovering from the effects of sexaholism and my behavior with that in both SA and s-anon. I am so grateful for Roy. You know, he was all so human, and he didn't hide his humanness and from anybody. And I got to know him better through phone calls. We would talk now and then, and usually it was because he was concerned about helping somebody get a connection, you know, like somebody in South America needed a woman to talk to. And that is something that he was just passionate about, being there for the newcomer, being able to help people with this disease of sexaholism. And what I really appreciated about those phone calls is that at the end of each phone call, he would say, "Let's pray together." And we would pray for that person, that situation, or whatever we felt in our hearts to pray for. And that's what I learned to do about any situation that or person that I just know that I can just pray about it and take it to my higher power. And second of all, I'm so grateful. I don't know how they came up with the sobriety definition, but it was exactly tailor-made for me. And I am so grateful for that, because that gave real clarity to what was happening in my life and what I needed to do. Thank you.
One of the problems is we're going to run out of time, so Jim C. will be our last one that shares on this. There are cards on the back table back there if you want to write something and remembering Roy and thanking him. Sign it, fill it out, and put it on the board out there. Thank you for coming.
Hi, my name is Robin, and I'm a sexaholic. I'm one of the really lucky people who attended Roy's home group the last few years of his life. I saw Roy 3-4 times a month. Roy was just a regular guy that attended the meetings, participated in the meetings just like everybody else. He was just, "Hi, I'm Roy. I'm a sexaholic." In saying that, it was clear that I got to know Roy in a way that I really appreciated, that this program is about principles, not personalities. Because if you're around Roy, as much as I was around Roy, you got to see the wide breadth of his personality. And if this program was about personalities, none of us would be here. And I don't say that in a mean way. I say that in a human way. Roy got the picture, and Roy was able to give it to us in a way that we could use it. This is not a program about Roy. This is a program about God. And that's what Roy was trying to tell us in all of his ways. Thank you very much, Roy, for everything you've given me and all of us.
My name's Judd. I'm a sexaholic. I'm one of those lucky people that never knew Roy, but who was very impacted by what he's done. I did meet him at a Unity conference 6.5 years ago. I didn't like reading parts of the White Book. I didn't like what he had to say the first time when I met him. I thought he's kind of wacko, But through this program, I didn't think when I came in here in 2004 that I'd be going to a far-off country, no notion of what was going to be happening in my life. But I ended up in Ireland in 2007, and there was a fellowship there, and I found the rooms of the fellowship there, and I brought what I had, and I got to bring it to people there, and they gave me what they had, and I ended up in Cork, Ireland, in January of 2008. 2 weeks after I arrived, there was a convention, 20 people from all over Ireland. There was one meeting a week in Cork, and I went. The guy that was there, he had 7 years of sobriety. I found out later, he and Roy would talk, and I got grateful for Roy because he's reaching out to people on the phone, and I found out it's just about calling people. It's the things that my sponsor had been teaching me. Call a newcomer. That's it. It's so simple, but it has such a profound effect. I just wanted to share that. Thanks for listening.
Hi, Rich. I'm a lustaholic. He's still sober. Darn, how does he do it? Met Roy about 15 years ago at a conference, and I wasn't even in the program yet. I'd only gone to a newcomers meeting, and I kept asking, "Where's Roy? Where's Roy?" And then finally I noticed this guy walking around, or actually running, with about 15 people behind him, all newbies, trying to touch his cloak. So I finally tracked him down. I came up to him, and he looked at me, and I guess he saw the deer in the headlight look. Roy. And I don't know how many people asked him to sign the white book over the years, but he takes me over to a corner and sits down with me. He goes, "Okay, now we're at the same level." He goes, "How can I be of service today?" If I could just have a smidgen of his humility, I'd be very successful in life. Anyway, I got very sober through his writings, especially particularly his Impossible Joy book, which is the Christian approach, which I'm Christian, so that really worked for me. And I'd like to just request, if anybody here is a newcomer or if you struggle with lust, please call me. I don't sponsor people, but I temporarily sponsor people, and I take phone calls up till midnight, and a lot of us don't do that. And if I could just pass on, what he's done for me. I've been cured in the program at least 3 times. I come up to Roy, "It's great, I'm so sober, and I haven't gone to meetings in 6 weeks," and he'd look at me and go, "How's that working for you?" So maybe there isn't a cure, but there is tremendous healing, and that's what this is all about, and it's all about lust. And I stopped celebrating my physical sobriety about 6 years ago, and I only celebrate my lust sobriety today, and I'm not as lust-free as I'd like to be. I mean, I've gone 2 years without lusting a bit, and I owe that to him, quite frankly. Lastly, I just want to say that it's very clear in the Bible that God is preparing us each a mansion in heaven, and I can't. I'm sorry, forget it. I said the Bible, but I know he's going to have a mansion, okay? And so basically, I would like to go there, and mine will be about the size of his doghouse. And I hope he just invites me over for a barbecue, for crying out loud. Anyway, thanks for letting me share.
My name is Betsy T., and I'm from Washington, D.C., grateful recovering sexaholic. And I am very blessed to have been in the fellowship and then left willfully and then have come back, and by the grace of God. And so I have sort of a two-part Roy memory. The sort of faded memory of when I first came in the program in 1985 and met him at I think it was at the Bozeman Conference. And then Washington, D.C. had the International Conference in 1990. And by some grace, little old me, I was renting a townhouse on Capitol Hill in Washington, and he and a bunch of other people came to my house for, wow, and we barbecued chicken. And I think it was that time that he and I and Lawrence M., also from the Washington area, went and talked to some psychiatrists. I think that was probably 1990, to explain to them about sex addiction. And I remember being, I was supposed to know my way around Washington, D.C. and think I was an important person. And I was scared to death to go talk to these psychiatrists and tell them about my sex addiction. And Roy's calm was, I'll never forget what he said to me. He just said, fear not. And but there's a better, I think, a more cherished memory, and that is when I did leave it's not cherished memory that I left the fellowship. That was, very sad. I'll just say one other thing, and that is before I left the fellowship, I was on the Cook Committee. I was Central Office Oversight Committee. And God gives second chances on those things, too, because now I'm a trustee. But so weekly or monthly phone calls with Roy and somebody else, several other people across the country on running. I didn't even know it was a garage. I hadn't seen it, but running the garage, running central office. But the sweeter memory is when I came back and how he welcomed me, and in 2001. And for that, I'll never be sufficiently grateful. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff from Portland, Oregon, and I am a grateful recovering sexaholic. I never knew Roy K., so I was sitting there, I was thinking, well, I can't come up. And then I thought, well, I know David, and I'm getting to know a lot of you guys, and I've been in the program for a while. So, in a sense, my thank you is really to those of you who are talking about it. Because I wouldn't know what it was like to know Roy or be in the fellowship at that time. And I think it's great. I mean, yeah, it's personality, but it's cool to hear. It's great history. I like the pictures. Whoever put that together, I got a big thank you for that. I love seeing that type of stuff. I love seeing the chronological history of it. Just for me, I'm kind of a history guy, and for some reason, it just puts it in perspective. It makes a connection. Like, where was I in 1981? Ooh, that was not a good place. But it was good to hear. Yeah, things were starting. They were waiting. They were getting it ready for me. So I think I just leave it with that, with just a big thank you and a big respect. And I just thought about kind of the generational of, there's always people that come before us, and it's important to remember that. And I think putting this convention together and this group has really honored that, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
David Maynard. I'm a sexaholic. By the grace of God, my sobriety date's August 2nd, 1988, for which I can never be sufficiently grateful. I have a few memories that I'd like to share. My first encounter with Roy, I knew he was there, was in January of 1990 when we did the International in Nashville, and Roy had been up in a hotel room for 3 days with Lawrence and John and Gene, editing Recovery Continues. And he came down to talk to us the first Friday night, and he was so upset. People were changing his words, and he did not like it. And then he just went along with it. And the book was published, and of course is a fundamental part of our literature. I remember I didn't meet him then, but I saw the same process with the White Book, and I saw Jean's edited copy of the White Book, and most of the changes she had are the ones that are in there today. And again, Roy went along with it. And I was always very grateful to have seen both sides of that. And I tell my wife to this day, if you'll let me whine and complain about things, I'll do almost anything. And I like to think Roy's been one of my models for that. When we moved the office to Nashville in 1994, and I was part of the group, Sylvia and Betsy and I and 5 others were the committee that took over S.A. I remember in Chicago, Roy sitting on one side of a ballroom like this, and I remember sitting in the back corner, and this is when he passed on the fellowship. And in 94, we moved the office, and Roy and Iris came and stayed with me for 3 days while Roy interviewed candidates for our first administrator. And he was being so concerned about the well-being of the fellowship and passing it on to capable hands, and at the same time, he was reluctantly letting it go, too. And it was another example of, I don't really want to do this, I know it has to be done, and I'm doing it. And reminded Iris of that last night. We got to talk about it, and I was thinking, she has fond memories of the visit, and so do I. And it was such a gracious thing that they did. The last 2 memories kind of go together. In 1998, Roy and I were talking on the phone, and I asked him how he wanted to be remembered. And we batted it back and forth a bit, and then shared some of it in a letter. And about 1.5 years ago now, he called. I was one of many people he called in October, November of 2008. And he made amends for anything he had done, and I was able to share my own thoughts. And one of the things that has always been important to me is, first, that he did it. He served as a model for so many things and set up a fellowship like AA that makes this transition between the growth of 12-step movement so easy for us. And secondly, that he wanted to be as gracious in his departure as he was in his living. And for that, I'll never be sufficiently grateful. Thank you.
I'm Jim. I'm a sexaholic. And I certainly did not mean to have the last word on this by any stretch. 2 things come to mind. First, I'm lucky enough to live here in L.A. and to occasionally see Roy in meetings and whatnot. I can remember the first time I really spent time with Roy was in that back meeting room right there. I think it's Los Angeles maybe. And I was a relative newcomer at my first Unity conference, and I was leading a meeting on step 0. And who walks in and sits down in my meeting? I've always sort of had the philosophy that if you want something, you find people that have it, and you try to learn from them, you stick with them. So when I first came in program, I tried to find a sponsor that had sobriety. I hung around with the people that had the sobriety. That was the key. And so I knew who Roy was, and the thought that he was in that meeting with me sort of terrified me. But it was good. We had a great meeting, and he participated in that meeting like anybody else. The last thing I want to say at the very end, about 2 years ago, he would occasionally come to a Saturday night all groups meeting in West LA, and sometimes share, or sometimes just sit and listen. And he would also sometimes come to the intergroup meeting that occurs right before that. And we had an intergroup meeting maybe 2 years ago. And Roy came and was just sitting there, and some of you were in that meeting. And one of the things we do in that meeting is go around and say how much sobriety we have, and then the secretary counts who has sufficient sobriety to actually vote on issues at the meeting. And so people go around, well, I have 30 days, well, I have 90 days, I have 4 years, I have, 6 weeks, I have 2 days, so they go around the room like that. And after the meeting, I was talking to Roy out, and he was shaking his head. And he was questioning himself as to, were we on the right path? That after all these years, there's an inner group in Los Angeles where only a dozen people had enough sobriety to actually vote on things. And my first reaction was, how can you possibly doubt yourself? You saved my life. I'm here and alive because of what you and others have brought. How could there be any doubt about that? But over time, I've begun to look at that and realize that it wasn't so much doubt as it was, I'm not done. There's more to do. And I think that was the message that has sort of crystallized with me after that. It's continuing to serve, continuing the message that that's what he was trying to express, that, hey, yeah, we got a lot of folks in the fellowship, great. We got a lot of work to do and a lot of sobriety to go. So thanks for letting me share.
I'm Mike. I'm still a grateful recovering sexaholic and still a very happy sexaholic. Thank you, thank you, thank you for those who came up and shared your experience with Roy. Many of you have had personal experiences. Some of you have had through the fellowship. I want to share one thing that happened last night after the speakers meeting. Every one of the family members of Iris, some with tears in their eyes, said, thank you for inviting us. We felt at home. We felt welcomed. And Joyce's sister said the same thing. And Iris was overwhelmed about being invited. And lastly, anything we can do to remember Roy is principles, moving forward, and have a closer relationship with our God or our higher power. Because therein lies the answer to our fellowships. And I am very pleased to have been on at this committee. Thank you very much for being here. What I'd like to do, these cards right here, there's some on the back table. We'll leave that board up for a little bit. Write your comments about what SA or s-anon's meant to you. It really would be fitting as a tribute to Roy. As many have heard, Roy wouldn't want anybody to know this. If you knew Roy, he helped start s-anon. He was a very instrumental person in involving that. And he would not want to be recognized for that, as many other things as well. So with that said, I would suggest that we get in some type of group, hands held, and we'll say the third step prayer. Thank you for being here.